Online hear us? Can somebody just give a thumbs up in chat? Okay, we have a thumbs up. Let's put this here. Okay, well, welcome everyone, both in person and online here to the Castlegar and Area I&J RDCK Financial Plan public meeting. So I'll just get the people up front here. Well, I'll introduce myself first. I'm Yev Maloff. I'm the General Manager of Finance, IT, Procurement, as well as the CFO. So I'll be doing most of the presentation tonight, but we'll have a couple of the staff up here also present. So I'll let the front table introduce themselves.
You go like that, then you blow.
Check. I think it's on.
Thank you.
Oh, no, that's...
Is it shorting or what? I can speak loudly. I don't need the mic.
Oh. There you go.
Online. Michael, there we go. Thanks. So welcome everybody to the Brilliant Cultural Center, which is in Area I, which is the area that I have the privilege of representing. And my name is Andy Davidoff. I'm the director for the area, and looking forward to hearing from you about our budget.
Hi, Maria McFadden, Director for City of Castlegar, also the Mayor for the City of Castlegar.
Henny Hanegraaff, Director, Area J, which surrounds Brilliant.
Not totally.
Joe Carrico, I'm the General Manager of Community Services.
Good evening, I'm Tricia Davison. I'm the Regional Manager of Recreation and Client Services.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll start the presentation. So we chose this slide because it actually shows parts of Area J, I, and the City of Castlegar, and I'm guessing sometime in summer. So we'll get the presentation going. So next slide. Agenda tonight, we're going to do a bit of an overview about the regional district and our services model, talk about property assessments and the budget impact and overall outlook for 2025, and a service-by-service discussion followed by some pie charts showing the estimated taxation by defined area. Next slide. So preamble reminder, this is a draft budget. This is actually the third version in the last 3 weeks. So our finance staff still working on year-end adjustments, which can affect this year's budget. As well, we have staff, committee, commission, director, and board level reviews that are continuing. Public information sessions, just like this one, are also in process, and this presentation is based on the latest draft, which was produced on Tuesday. So if any, as far as questions from the crowd, from the audience and both online, I'm going to, rather than have questions on every slide, stop a couple times in the presentation. So if you can keep your, remember your questions, and then we'll stop, ask, and allow for questions then, rather than getting into the details of every slide. So next slide. Okay, this is just an overview, a bit of an overview of the budget process. So it starts in October with staff and directors and committees working on their budgets. But so the main, this is broken out into the four main sections. We have the board that just met last week for an all-day session review of the budget. We have numerous, at least a dozen or more committees and commissions that have several budget meetings throughout over the last 3 months where budgets are discussed in great detail. So if somebody's really interested in, for instance, the intricate details of the rec budget or the waste resources budget. We have public meetings for those where the directors discuss the budgets in greater detail than we will be tonight. And then a couple of the communities have local service committees where the participants discuss numerous budgets in a single forum. So that's in Creston and Caslow. And then we also have discussions with directors directly relating to budgets that are unique to their area. So next slide. So the regional district of Central Kootenay, a bit of an overview. So it's one of 27 regional districts in BC. There's 11 rural electoral areas in the regional district, A to K, 10 member municipalities, and providing a range of 186 services, including parks and rec, rural fire and emergency management, resource recovery, building inspection, planning, bylaw, GIS, transit, and each service basically stands on its own, and what that means is each service has its own budget, its own funding. We can't move funds if there's a surplus or deficit in the service from one to the other. So that's different from a municipality. Municipality has more flexibility. They can have one big reserve fund and use it to fund whatever service. Each service in the regional district needs to have its own reserve fund that it can only use. And a few statistics, so just under 300 full-time equivalent employees. So that means if you took all the hours of everybody that worked, divided it by 1,800, which is a typical working year, you come up with about 298. 280 volunteer firefighters and 62,500 residents over spanning 22,000 kilometers in the regional district. Next slide. Just a few of the regulations, or a bunch of the regulations that impact the regional district. Won't go through them all, but the circle in red are the two main ones. The Local Government Act and the Community Charter regulate a lot of what we do, what we can do, and what we can't do. So all these regulations are online on the provincial government's website. And those two are definitely a good or a large starting point to understand local government in BC. Next slide. Okay, so how are annual property taxes in the regional district calculated? This is often causes confusion. So tax requisition amounts for each service are determined through the RDCK budget process. So a budget is set, the amount of tax requisition required to fund the service is calculated, and a completely separate process by a BC government agency, the BC Assessment. They do all the property assessments. The regional district is not involved in any part of doing property valuations, assessments, or any challenges to those. So, Michael, yeah, click there. And then, so you take the tax requisition for the service divided by the assessment, you come up with a tax rate for each service and multiply it by the assessed value of each individual property. And then that gets you the property tax for each individual property for each service. So each service that we look at has its own tax rate, again, which is different than a municipality. A municipality will have one tax rate for the most part for the municipality as a whole versus the RD, which I'll show in a couple of slides coming forward. So next slide. So this chart here basically shows the change in assessment value as a percentage. Year over year is the blue bars. So as you can see from the largest increase was Area K, almost 11%. Slocan actually almost had a 7% decrease. So the distribution there is about almost 18% difference. And the orange bars are the 9-year average. So as you can see, the 9-year average is much tighter. And so even though Castlegar assessment increased quite a bit more than areas J and I over the last year, If you go back 9 years, I and J actually increased more, so a little bit more. So this just shows that there's a bit of a reversion to the mean over a longer period of time. Next slide. So we're not going to get, these numbers are small. This is just to show you what's in the financial plan. So the financial plan is available on the RDCK website under the administration section and financial statements. So the three main components are on the left-hand side, there's the taxation details by area municipality, and it shows the taxation changes over a 3-year period for each service for each area. And then there's a summary table, which I'll show, that shows the change in assessment and taxation for each area and municipality, so it's a good place to compare. And then there's detailed service statements, and there's a couple hundred pages of those where it goes into the details by basically account where all the spending and all the revenue comes for each service. So lots of information there if anybody wants to get into it. So next slide. So this is again out of the financial plan, and this shows the taxation details. In this case, sorry, it says, yeah, this is Area I. And on the left-hand side, it lists all the services that are provided to residents or Area I residents pay into. And the top part is the services that everybody in Area I participates in. And the bottom are what we call defined area services. So only a few properties or half the area participates in that service. And that's the way that is split. So next slide. And similar table for Area J. You probably noticed that it's a little different length because there's a different set of defined services on the bottom for Area J. And next slide. And again, these are all in the financial plan. Here's the City of Castlegar. It participates or shares in a smaller set of services in the regional district. But as we can see, the main ones there are the arena and the aquatic center. Okay, next slide. And this is just an example of a property tax bill for rural residents. And so what's circled in red there is the regional district portion of taxes. So the largest one there is for the services that everybody in your electoral area participates in, and then it'll list out any defined area services that your property exists in. And then as you can see, your tax bill is also made up of school taxes, some provincial taxes, hospital board, and a couple other smaller items. Next slide. Okay, here's that summary table that I was speaking about, and this has all the electoral areas and municipalities listed, and it shows the change in total assessment year over year. So we can see that I and J are about 4% increase in assessment, Castlegar about 8%, so the value that increased more. Overall average for the regional districts about 5.2. And then on the right-hand side is taxation change. So 6.5% average overall for the regional district, Area I 8.6, J 5.5, and Castlegar 2.3 for the RDCK portion of taxes. So next slide. Okay, I'll just stop there if anybody's got any questions about sort of the structure of the financial plan or how assessments work or anything I've presented so far.
Yeah, can I ask a question? Yep, it's Christine. Can you hear me?
Okay, so we've been asked why is Area I higher this year? That's because some of the services that it participates in had larger increases. So it's got some unique services that saw larger increases. I think fire is one of them. Saw a larger increase. The fire service in Area I saw a larger increase in taxation than for instance, the fire service increases in J. So it really depends on so the services in Area I that aren't in J saw a larger increase, and that's what's driving the increase.
Yeah, but I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah.
Oh, speak on
Yeah.
that. Okay. Sorry. On again.
Oh. Should be on.
Best. So the first iteration of the budget that the board saw was on February 20th. And at that point, Area I's taxation was actually higher than this. And then we had our meeting on the 21st, and the iteration that we're looking at now, the version is the February 25th version, and already we've dropped overall taxation by 1.2% across the board for a half a Hello, there we go. So basically, we're still working on the budget. For every $18,000 reduction in the Area I budget, that's a 1% tax saving. So the work is not finished yet.
Okay, thank you, Andy. And we have another question there. Can you come up to the mic, please? Then the people online can hear you.
What exactly entails the fire services? You said that seemed to be the main increase. So I'd like to know exactly what does that involve, please?
Yeah, so fire protection services is basically the costs of running the two fire halls in Area I. So paying the volunteer the firefighters, replacing apparatus, replacing equipment. So what's happened in fire protection services over the last 5 years is the costs of procuring personal protection gear, fire apparatus has increased far more than inflation has. So 5 years ago, we could have bought a fire truck for, I don't know, about $400,000. Well, they're over $900,000 now. As well as other costs related to that. So anything to do with running a fire hall or a fire department, I would say costs have increased over the last 5 years by at least 50%, if not 80%.
Okay, but we're talking within the last year. And being that these are smaller kind of fire halls, I haven't seen any new trucks, equipment, so I'm just trying to understand exactly what that expense.
Right, and we will get into fire halls a bit later, so maybe let's leave that question. We do have a slide on fire halls. So I just want to, the questions now should just be sort of for the understanding of how taxation works and everything. So we'll get into further detail later. Okay, so I'll keep moving here. So 2025 overall outlook. So Michael online, I see that oh no, we're good, thank you. So projected overall average tax increase is 6.5% in the draft budget. We did a bit of a comparison with other regional districts and municipalities, and that's lower than average. We saw most of them are somewhere between 7 and 9%. Some are lower and some are higher, and of course some will be making adjustments similar to what we are. So. And our total tax requisition currently is about $700,000 lower than we had forecast last year for 2025. So the CPI or inflation increase for staff salaries and director stipends in the budget's 3.3%. It's effectively a 2-year average is used. And so decreasing interest rates are reducing interest charges on short-term loans, but they're also reducing investment income. And so we're also continuing, the Regional District is also continuing work on a formal asset management plan. So this is becoming a requirement for many of some of our grant streams, particularly Community Works. Community Works is a grant we get from the federal government, and it's about $1.5 million a year to go towards infrastructure. And one of their requirements now is we formalize an asset management plan. Part of that is having an asset management specialist. So the board approved that position last week. So that's the one new position that's approved in the current budget. Next slide. So challenges and opportunities, as many of you are, I'm sure, aware, lots of discussion in the news about trade disputes, including tariffs and counter tariffs. So we're potentially going to see, at a minimum, increased procurement costs, potentially leading to a slowdown in economic activity, which could lead to lower building permit, waste disposal, and recreation fee revenues. And if we get more severe downturn, that could definitely have a wider effect. The Canadian dollar has been fluctuating. If it drops again, it's bounced back a little bit. That could drive up some procurement costs. Discussion about a new federal government. Right now, the impact's uncertain on the regional district. And the other thing that's in the news a lot lately is artificial intelligence. So that technology is evolving very quickly. Currently, we're seeing some limited, although successful, use of the regional district. And we need, as a public sector organization, or anybody using AI, should be mindful of the accuracy and privacy concerns. And we are working on an AI strategy, including training for staff. So next slide. So we'll go through the services now, most of the larger services that Castlegar I&J residents pay into. So the first one is S100, General Administration. So this includes corporate admin, finance, information technology, human resources, CEO's office, and municipal directors. So this service is seeing an 8% taxation increase this year. One of the larger projects to the building is a $138,000 roofing replacement. From an HR perspective, we've seen a larger pool when we're recruiting of applicants for positions that come open, like say when somebody leaves, but the challenge has been applicants finding affordable housing, and as well having high expectation for wages and compensation. So that's impeding recruitment efforts. Some other projects we're working on is migration to SharePoint, Microsoft 365, continuing to build our cybersecurity resilience. A new website will be launching soon, probably in the next week or so. And then an organizational review that the board approved is set to commence this year. So next slide. Rural administration, now this is just a service that I&J participate in, S101, 25% taxation increase. Its two main components besides rural directors are regional fire services overhead. So this provides the oversight and coordination for our 21 fire services. And we're expecting again about almost a $500,000 grant for training our firefighters. And there's a reserve-funded vehicle in the budget this year. The other part of rural admin is bylaw enforcement. So this includes noise, animal control, unsightly nuisance properties, zoning, and soil removal deposit bylaw enforcement. And those bylaws vary by electoral area. So not every area has the same set of bylaws. So that varies throughout the RD. So next slide. So GIS, so this service provides the regional mapping services, including the web map. It does our landfill measurements, and very importantly provides the mapping for fire services and emergency service, including mapping of evacuation alerts and orders. On the right-hand side there's a map of the evacuation orders for the Agenta fire from last year. So this service is seeing a relatively minor increase of 3%. And a few projects underway, including a strategic assessment, some upgrades to their systems, and a purchase of some hardware. So next slide. Building inspection. This is provided throughout the rural areas. So this is areas I&J for this area. So 26% taxation increase. Last year, permit revenue softened considerably. We had in the budget about $950,000. We were looking at and we actually ended up being about $636,000. And because of that, 2 open building inspection positions were removed from the budget. So we're not going to budget or fill or tax for those positions until permit activity recovers. And then some of the work that the group does, staying current with revisions to the BC Building Code, and as well, we have some new accounting standards that may impact the way we account for this service. Next slide. Planning and Land Use, Service S104. So this is a service responsible for administration of zoning, land use, and development applications, including long-term community plans. As some of the residents in Area I might be familiar, so this service looks after OCPs as well. And so it's seeing an 18% tax increase. It's getting some funding to address some housing regulation. Yes? Oh, OCP, Official Community Plan. Yeah, thank you. And revising floodplain bylaw, as well as working on a community needs project. Next slide. So West Resource Recovery. So the regional district looks after waste and resource recovery for all the municipalities and all the electoral areas in the regional district. So in this case, S188, the resource recovery is split into three areas in the regional district. So west is basically everybody from Castlegar up through Nakusp. And this includes transfer stations, recycling depots, landfills, as well as the transportation of materials. So we're seeing or forecasting 8% taxation and 10% tipping fee increase, and a number of initiatives and changes underway, some which is driven by regulation. So a change to contaminated wood waste management. There are several transfer stations that are being upgraded, mainly in the Slocan Valley. The Nakusp landfill closure planning's underway, some assessments, and some work at the Urishenya landfill. Next slide. Recreation. So we're on recreation.
There's a question online now.
Okay, we do have a question online, so we'll. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead with your question online, Christine.
Can you hear me? No? Are you able to hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay, maybe while I'm waiting for that, is there anybody here that's got a question on those last 5 or 6 services?
Are you able to hear me now?
Okay.
At the board meeting last week, general admin, the increase was 27%, and now it's down to 8%. And when looking at it, I could see you took 50,000 out of capital expenditures. How did you reduce the rest? Like, how did it go from 27 to 8?
Well, there were some motions passed to the board that reduced it. Some use of reserves. Most of the difference was our finance group progressed further on their accounting for 2024, so we had a larger surplus identified for 2024, and that was brought forward into the budget for 2025. So there's a range of areas where that makes up that difference.
Okay, so when I looked at it and I was trying to figure out how it went from 27 to 8, because that actually probably accounts, Director Davidoff, for the reduction in Area I that you referred to, because that is split up among all of the participants. But when I looked at it, the one thing I noticed that didn't change was any of the other expenses. So you've got travel, you've got conferences, you got education, training, all of those expenses there, none of them changed. So my question is, I have to backtrack a little bit. There's another service called CSLAC, and it's the Community Sustainable Living Advisory Committee, or whatever it's called. And only the electoral areas and maybe 1 or 2 municipalities participate. But what they did at the last CSLAC meeting was produce a 7-year average of all of the figures, which was a really helpful. Gary Jackman asked for it, and it was produced, and it was all of for the last 7 years, plus an average. Now, I don't know what they did with that information, but I think that should happen in every single service. Because because right now, this is like the second budget or third budget I've seen of the RDCK, there is never any reduction of any expenses. It all comes through contributed surplus, reserves, whatever, but it's never reducing actual expenses. And without seeing the 7 years, how can you don't have the 7-year actual. So what I'd like to see is every service and every director provided with that information. So
Okay, I would just challenge that. In this particular example, there were no expenses, but during last year's budget process, there's probably at least a dozen reductions in expenses and grants through the budget process. So I'm just.
Well,
I would challenge
you
that,
can look at the budget amount and the actual amount for 2024. There's a marked difference. You budgeted for X, but you only spent a quarter of it, but that never changed the 2025 budgeted amount. The amount spent in 24 seems to be irrelevant to what, it just seems like the expenses are, just add on 10%, add on 8%, whatever it is. So anyway, that's how it appears from this side. So that's my one question about all of the services. But back to building. So how long have those positions been empty?
I don't know exactly. I think it goes back just over a year.
Okay, they were definitely empty at the last budget because the conversation was along the lines of, well, we'll stay fully staffed because we need to catch up. So how on earth is there a 25% increase in their budget and losing 2 positions that were budgeted for? Like what? It should have gone down $200,000 minimum.
Let's have a look at it here.
And you knew, like, there was a discussion at the last budget about how permit income was going to soften. You accounted for it. You knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, so I think last year's budget was a decrease from the original permit calculation. So I don't know if I would agree that everybody saw that building permits would drop to that extent that they did. So that I wouldn't say it was totally forecast. So the original budget of 950 might have been a bit aggressive, but it did drop much further than anybody expected.
Okay, but I really think, and I've heard directors say it, I've heard Gary Jackman say it, I've heard other directors say, expenses need to be examined, actual expenses, and brought more in line with the budget. And the notes, like, we don't see the notes column, but in those sheets online, there's a notes field that explains what happened, why was the actual so far off of the budget, and we don't get to see that. In the in the Area H budget meeting this morning, they have that. They had the notes field. They could see the explanation of what the budgeted amount was all about. So as a user, and I made this comment last year, the documents are not user-friendly. They don't give enough information to make really any educated or uneducated or try to be educated assessment of what's going on. So I think if you're going to trim budgets, it has to be those expenses, and you have to give the directors and the residents the information. of actuals over the last 7 years. I think that's a really valuable tool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there a
try
question
again.
online?
You can't hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. Okay, I'll go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you, speaker, whoever that was talking. I had exactly the same questions. I think we seen 2 slides ago a slide on rural administration, and we spoke to a 25% increase, but I didn't actually get any highlights on what was the 25% increase for. We talked about different things, but we didn't actually speak to why there was a 25% increase. And then back to the building inspection budget, I just think exactly the same thing. If we are losing 2 positions from a budget, that's got to be close to $300,000. So our budget should have reduced, and yet we're going up 28%. So that means to me that we're going up like 40% because those positions shouldn't be there. So, and I don't think that we got the answer, Yev, about why that budget is going up that much.
Yeah, so the original version of this budget that had those positions showed requisitions at 1.4 million. So the reduction of those or nearly 1.4 million, and so between those 2 positions and a couple other reductions, that's what gets us to 1.1.
Can I just follow up?
Yes.
Thanks. I also agree with the lady that was speaking, where I tried to go online as well, and I tried to look for an overall budget, but you can't, because you have to filter through 211 pages of individual budgets, and it's very difficult to come forward with informed questions. I do not disagree with her comments, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no other further questions, we'll pass it over to Tricia. Oh, we have another question. Yeah.
We're on the expenses, because I kind of had the same sort of thing. Again, just when you go through it and you're looking at it and you're trying to make heads and tails of it, it is very difficult. My background is accounting, it's numbers, it's efficiencies, it's deficiencies. So when I was going through it and I'm just looking at some of these things, they don't make sense the way that they're presented. So with the salary based on the 2024 versus the 2025, it's about a 6% increase for $219,000. But again, if we're losing 2 permit people and only replacing with an asset management position, why would that be going up so much? These are just general questions. I don't expect any responses, to be honest with you right now. Employee health and safety, an increase of $20,000 from prior year. Like $475,000 for director's allowance and stripping. What exactly does that detail? What exactly does that break out? What are those sort of things? This is all information that if you wanted to provide clear transparency to those of us who pay the taxes, it would be greatly appreciated so we could understand exactly where our money's going. Education and training, for example. Did you know that you guys exceeded the 2024 budget by 350%? And that your 2025 budget for education and training is actually 425% of your 2024 budget? Just putting it out there.
Sorry, which service is that?
Your education and training.
Sorry, in which service?
In your overall general administration expenses. Contracted services, for example. Again, this is your overall general. Why was the budget exceeded by 135%? Why is that being increased by 170% from the 2024 numbers? You'd mentioned that you can't really transfer to other services. However, under the general administration section, towards the bottom, there is a spot that says transfer to other services. If you look at the 2024 budget, or 2024 draft, 24 budget, it's exceeded it by 170%. Then you look at the draft budget for 2025, and you guys have bumped that up 210% from the 2024 budget. Again, as a person who deals with numbers on a daily basis, tries to look for efficiencies, deficiencies in multiple different organizations and how things can be streamlined. You guys really need to sit down and go through these expenses properly. You need to start providing notes to us, the public, so that we can understand where exactly this is all going.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Tricia?
I'm going to make sure that I don't get any feedback feedback as in like mic feedback. I can hear it. Can you hear it? Here, you're good? Okay. So, good evening. Nice to see you all. Thanks for coming. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Parks and Recreation side of the services in Castlegar Area I and Area J. So we're going to start with service S222 and specifically with parks. So in this area of the regional district, there are 5 regional parks, 4 of which you'll see mentioned there, largely just to highlight some of the major work going on in those particular park areas. The only one that's not on there that is in this region is the Brilliant Bridge. And those are 5 of, I believe that we're at 27 regional parks within the district, just so you're aware. So in Glade, we have been doing some community consultation work. It was in the spring of 2024, and we're continuing to work on some park improvements in Glade that serve obviously all residents and certainly the residents of Glade. In Pass Creek, we're doing some work related to some water system upgrades that were required in that particular park. At Waterloo Eddy, we're doing some ecosystem restoration that's involving the Okanagan Nation Alliance. And the Robson Boat Ramp, we're doing some resurfacing of that particular boat ramp deck to make it, well, not so run down. Basically, it just needs to be repaired. So we have, oh, thank you, that's good, I'm good with that. So in this service area as well, we've also undertaken across the district something called the Parks, Recreation and Water Access, Parks, Trails and Water Access Strategy. And it's to identify strategic priorities that define the future direction, philosophy, policies and actions for the provision of regional and community parks. So we've had a variety of meetings with the working group. Certainly lots of public consultation over the last year. The project has been underway since January of 2024 and will continue this year and is aiming to be completed in the fall of 2025. You can go to the next slide. So within S222, there is also the Castlegar District Recreation Complex. And so all of Area I, Area J, and the City of Castlegar pay into a portion of that complex, which is basically the arena side of that facility, as well as the meeting rooms, basically the non-aquatic and fitness center. And so in that particular service, there are a variety of capital projects planned for 2025, totaling $2.19 million. There's a list of them there, and maybe a couple that might be of interest is in the arena. So this is at the complex arena. There's a rooftop unit going in for $75,000. There's some roof work being done for $425,000. Some insulation work, which is actually a low-E ceiling for $450,000, and door replacement of $125,000. There's also other complex roof repairs in the neighborhood of $885,000, separate from the actual complex, but also still falling into the capital works of this service area. There's the decommissioning of the Pioneer Arena. I'm sure many of you are aware the Pioneer's last operational weekend is this weekend, as well as there's some work through the Glade Park Legacy project. So all of those works fall into the capital of S222. You can go to the next slide. Actually, can you go back one slide? Sorry, Michael, thank you. So just to maybe summarize S222, so there is a requisition decrease of approximately 10% or $308,000 and change. Now you can go to the next slide, Michael, thanks. So in S227, That's the aquatics and fitness side of the Castlegar and District Complex. So City of Castlegar, Area J, and a defined portion of Area I pay into that service. And so this year, there's 2 projects that are contributing to capital in the total of $1.675 million, the major one being the pool roof repairs of $1.6 million and a rooftop unit that also needs to be replaced for $75,000. So in repairs and maintenance, this was just a bit of a summary of a couple things. There wasn't anything major to highlight in repairs and maintenance. There's some ongoing skate park repairs of about $10,000 that are required. There's some fitness equipment that'll go into the fitness center and some minor other work being done, as you can see, in both S222 and S227. Thanks, Michael. So in the 5-year capital plan, to fund the capital that we just walked through, so in S222, $911,000 are being borrowed and will be repaid over the next 5 years. Reserves are contributing $332,004 in 2025, and capital funded by requisitions equals about $416,720. And in service S227, reserve funding for capital is coming from reserves of $1.291720, as well as capital funding from requisitions is $383,280. This commission, and certainly they can speak as well, but this commission is very proud of their capital funding program that they have put in place that helps contribute to the actual ongoing infrastructure needs in these service areas, and they have had a very rigid plan that they have committed to now for 3 consecutive years. Yes, I'm getting a nod. Perfect. Thank you. So a couple of other initiatives that might be of interest to you. We, through the board, adopted a financial access and inclusion policy. And through that program, it basically helps ensure that we can provide services to people who may not otherwise be able to afford to come to recreation and pay the normal fees that you might see. So there's 2 major components of it that we have implemented since the approval of the policy, which was in the fall of 2024. So the first one on the left is in relation to low-cost services. So we initiated something called a cheer program, where every month there is, well, you'll see we call it a $2. We're just not always staying with necessarily a toonies type activity, but it's a $2 opportunity for people that anyone that can come at the time that that particular activity is advertised is welcome to do so. If you happen to be somebody that also qualifies for our leisure access program, which are people who have gone through a process to be identified as people in financial need, you actually can access that service for free. We are also in the process of developing a sponsorship policy. As some of you in this area may know, that at the complex you will sometimes see various activities where admission is free to the facility, and it's in part due to a local business that has offered to sponsor service on that particular day. So we're looking to formalize that framework and make it something that we can maybe do more proactively versus reactively, in the hopes that it will continue to contribute to the financial and access policy initiative. The actual leisure access program, which is one where if you are eligible for that service, you receive a discounted rate on general admission, and now you can also receive it on programs and other services. Up until January, the program was only for general admission and memberships, where now we have broadened that to other services to make sure that everyone has equitable access. So currently across the district, there are approximately 1,130 patrons currently enrolled in that program. You can go to the next slide, Michael. So in recreation, we thought we'd highlight a little bit of the programming initiatives and sort of some of the revenue highlights from the 2024 year. So you can see on the chart on the left, The orange is the 2023 actuals, blue is 2024 actuals. Overall, we are seeing usership across all of our revenue services, with the exception of rentals in S227, exceed previous years and exceed budget expectations again in 2024. The programming team specifically is focusing on those three initiatives on the right-hand side, so data collection and analysis to help inform decision-making and program planning, and program costing to ensure that our fees and charges policy is up to date and that we're charging appropriately for services. And certainly around space allocation, as we know, our services, we have competing interests in spaces, and so trying to figure out the highest and best use to provide the highest community benefit continues to be our priority, but it's something we continue to work on. And lastly, this may also be near and dear to some of you. We are just winding up the community engagement project that was going on for the better part of 2024 and into the early part of 2025 regarding the reimagining recreation in Castlegar and area. So that involved recreation in general, but also the complex specifically. So there were 3 phases that we went through in that project, and the report has just recently been finalized and will be released to the public, assuming Commission's approval, at their meeting next Tuesday. I think that's it for me. Thank you, Gav.
Thanks, Tricia. Okay, yep, please go ahead.
The first one is actually a request, and it has to do with parks. And it's, I saw your last report, like the year-end report for 2024. What it didn't have was a list of all of the parks and, you know, what was achieved per park. It was a lot of narrative, it was a lot of photos. I think it was Director Graham said, it'd be really nice to have a list of the parks. And, you know, here they are, here's what we did. So I think the directors and the public would like a report at the beginning of the year of all the parks and what is planned for the year, and then compare that at the end of the year. To me, that would be helpful. On the complex, can you explain to me again the purpose of the cheer program?
Sorry, I didn't know if you had more questions.
Well, like, who's it supposed to benefit? Like, what is the purpose of the cheer?
Sure. So, sorry, I was just waiting to see if you had more of your question that you wanted me to. Okay. So the purpose of it is to provide an opportunity for people who may not be able to, well, it's 2 things. One is it aims to provide an opportunity for people who may not be able to fully pay for regular admission to come to the facility, but it also means that it aims to hit another end of the spectrum of people who may be in financial need. So the actual financial access and inclusion policy hits a spectrum. So we have on one end people who might not basically be able to provide anything other than food and shelter, and how do we help those people have access to recreation? On the far end of the spectrum might be the people that might be interested in coming to a cheer event, who might not be eligible for leisure access or have another need that sort of fits in another spectrum of the policy, but may also give them some form of opportunity to participate in that service.
Okay, so is there any data that ties, you know, this low-cost program into low income? Like, to me, it seems conflated. It seems like you've taken like a reduced cost program, which is open to everybody, and somehow conflated it to low income, but it's open to everybody. So is there some kind of data you're collecting during the cheer program that actually shows it's achieving what you want it to achieve? Mm-hmm. Like, it's actually serving the people you're trying to get it to? Because if it's open to everybody, it's like a loss leader in a grocery store. You know, anyone can go in and buy, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean they need that financial assistance. It means they see a good deal and away they're going to go. So Are you collecting data? Is there a way to substantiate this program?
Yeah, and excuse me, my voice is cracking and still getting it back. So it's very new. We've only done we did 3 cheer events in the fall, and we've done, what are we in February? I think we've done 2 in the district since Christmas. So we're still in the very early phases of that, but the goal is to get some information related to that. But the other thing is to kind of also be aware that there's some people that we may never know for sure that they're in financial need. Sorry, I can hear that feedback. May never know that they're actually in financial need because we want to protect their integrity. If this is something that serves them, we want them to be able to come. If we have leisure access, so you may have missed in sorry, did my mic just cut out?
No, we can hear you.
In the leisure access, if you qualify for leisure access, you actually can get into a cheer event for free, meaning that then you're not paying that nominal fee. So the hope is that those people may also continue to extend that benefit into another service. So those are a variety of things that we will monitor and look at over time.
Leisure access is great. I benefited growing up here from those type of programs. So, but I don't see cheer actually being able to substantiate that it belongs in that program. I personally would advocate for taking it out of the budget because even though it sounds good, you have no way, unless you're going to ask people when they walk in the door, if their financial status, if this is helping them. So I personally don't see it. And I would be surprised if you can collect any data that would support it. So that's one thing. So I was wondering if you could explain to me how I know that programming is subsidized. Like there's no way any recreation programs will pay for themselves. We all agree with that. So do you have a formula on how they're subsidized, to what extent and for who? Like adults as opposed to seniors, as opposed to kids?
Am I back?
Yeah.
I'm back. So yes, there's a fee. I think what you're referring to is our fees and charges policy, which actually outlines exactly that, the degree of subsidization for children versus families versus individual use versus adults. That is contained within the fees and charges policy and is available on the RDCK website.
Okay. All right. I did see one of your slides up there. Programming, I can't remember how it was phrased, but the one thing I've noticed in recreation is that your programs don't come back to the recreation commissions with any numbers. You provide verbal reports saying, yep, it's all good, we had lots of people. You don't say how much that program cost, how much it brought in, and agreeing that it's never going to pay for itself. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. But there must be a threshold where, you know what, that program, it was so bad, it cost us so much money, it didn't bring in any revenue, it needs to go. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example. Here at the complex, was it last year or the year before, there was an adult learn how to play hockey introduced in February. Like, why? Why would you spend money to introduce a program in February about learning how to play hockey? September, okay. But I never, I don't get that. And I would have liked to seen a financial analysis of that after. How many people signed up? How much staff time was put into putting that program on? How much arena time was put into putting it? So, I would like to see, as a taxpayer, I'd like to see numbers for every program. What did it cost? What did it bring in? What's the threshold? Because there has to be a threshold. You can't just keep adding programs because they sound good. They have to have at least some sort of financial basis. So,
Would you like me to answer that a little bit?
oh yeah, I didn't think you could. So, sorry, go ahead.
I think I can. I can at least try. So, and the commission can certainly chime in as well, but they do receive reports at least 4 times a year in relation to exactly that, program statistics. And so they just received one at their February 4th commission meeting that you would be able to go back and actually look at through the minutes if you wanted to. But they do receive that information, and that scrutiny is 100% done through the programming team. Exactly what you say. The hockey one I can't answer. I'd have to look into that a little bit more. But from does a program run, does it not run, why they make choices on one program over another, have to make choices on, you know, whether a program is canceled or doesn't run because they don't have enough registration. All of those decisions are being made on an ongoing basis.
Okay, because I do attend the meetings and I do look at the documents, and it's never jumped out at me. So I was just thinking about one in the Salmo Arena, and it was the summer camp. And, the mayor of Salmo, Diana Lockwood, actually had to ask the presenter, well, how much did this cost? And how much revenue did it bring in? I mean, because it wasn't there. It wasn't in the report that was presented, this report that was at the... So that was just one that pops into my head. But I'll look deeper, I guess, going forward.
So Deb, I just wanted to respond. We do have, we even look at hourly allocations for aquatic services and programs, and I think what I'm hearing is you would like to see, and just correct me if I'm wrong, that you would like to see a business case analysis for every single offering in our rec services, and basically then there would be accountability, a decision made based after a business case analysis, and then once the offering is completed, to have a sort of an accounting of whether or not that's something that we should be doing again in the future. Am I correct?
Yeah, that is, and it doesn't even have to be really in-depth. But last year I asked, how do you even know who your clients are? How do you know what your demographics are? How can you even create programming if you don't know your demographics? And I see that you're making progress there, which is great, because I don't know even how you would come up with programming without demographics and a business case.
Yeah. So the data on I think some of us that have been there for a while, we have been asking questions about knowing who your users are and how do we track that. So we have had those conversations for quite a few years, and we've asked staff to move forward on making that happen. So that has been a conversation that's been going on for quite a while. The issue with business case analyses is that it takes staff.
Yeah.
Oh, shake it. You got to shake it. There you go. Got to shake it. So with the thing is, what you're saying is logical. For every business case analysis that you do, you have to assign staff time to do the analysis, and it's almost like you got to hire somebody to do business case analysis for every single offering. And that is a cost. Ultimately, you would have better data, no question. So it is something that we have discussed at the board table, sort of globally. Before we do something new, we should have a really, really good business case analysis. And staff's not disagreeing. They're just saying, we need staff to do that analysis. So that's how it works. And then how much time do you spend on a business case analysis for an offering that costs very few dollars? So then it's to determine. But these are questions that have been asked. We've discussed at the board table. Some of us really like business case analyses, and the key thing is that how much do you pay to get it done? So that's been an issue.
Yeah, I just want to add something just about every rec commission deals with their offerings differently. So you can't, just because Selmo and Area G might do theirs a certain way, Area I, J, and Castlegar might do theirs differently. Just like our asset management plan would be different here and how we do that than Nelson or there. So it's really important to not cross. It's really confusing in the regional district, but there is different governing bodies that do it differently. And I would say that as the directors or commissioners for the rec, which is what that would be at that table, it's our job to extrapolate some of that information. So we do get reports on our fees and policies bylaw that says, here's what your subsidization is. And I think that's looked over every 3 years, every 3 years? Every 3 years, we look at that over 3 years. We say, okay, what are we subsidizing and what age ranges are we subsidizing? Because we do have, someone comes in, they're paying a senior's rate or they're paying a family. There we go. Or they're paying a youth rate, or so we do have those numbers for which things. So then you know, okay, your threshold for different programming is going to be this. This is what you're subsidizing. This is where it's worth it. And then every, like they said, every however many months, we get a report saying, here's your stats on people who are using this, who are using that, who are using that, who are using that. So you as a public might not see it in one meeting because that, like Director Davidoff said, that would take a lot of time on staff. But we have the information to say we know how much we subsidize for a certain amount of people per program. And so we can do that governing without putting all of that onus on staff to do that every month, which again would cost you as a taxpayer a lot of money to be able to do a business case for every program, for every service that they do. So we do a lot of that. It just might not be as clear because of the amount of hours we spend doing this, right, compared to the public. And it's always a disconnect. It's a hard thing when you've got so much going on to figure out how to communicate that enough that is being done, but not always at every meeting you might attend. It's connecting the dots between what you're getting over a number of years to make good decisions.
Yeah. I just wanted to add one.
Well, thank you, Andy. I'm the newest one on the commission, and I have to say I've found, you talk about offerings and whether they're getting fully utilized. One of the biggest challenges we've had since I've been on the commission is getting up to pre-COVID levels, particularly around aquatics, because I don't know where all the lifeguards went during the pandemic, but we've had to offer to pay for training. We're like shaking every tree to find lifeguards so that we can open the way we were before the pandemic. We're still not there. It's been a real challenge. So, I guess things may look like they're being offered that don't serve the public, or however you want to phrase it. But on the other hand, other things are in play that are making it really difficult for us to be as fully operational as we'd like to be.
And, and I understand that. I attend all of your meetings, right? But what I don't agree with is verbal reports. And for a new program like the Learn to Skate one, let's do Learn to Skate, but we have no skating instructors. Or let's do this summer camp, but we have no camp counselors. So, it's just, I would like just to see a bit more structured reporting. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know, but I'm not a fan of verbal reports because there's no way to go back and what happened there. So
that's what I was going to address. We're actually very fortunate because Trish came to us from Trail. And you remember in Trail the issues they had with Rosalind and everybody pulling out of rec services, and then there was this incredible, complicated sort of program in place to track who you were, and whether you could access for, for the trail resident price or out of trail price. And Trish was the person looking after all of that. So if there's anybody that can work data for us, it's Trish. And we're lucky to have her. And believe you me, not throwing her under the bus, but the key thing is that what you're talking about in terms of more data, we are seeing a lot more reports, and we keep asking for more and more data. That is something the commissioners are asking. And sometimes we think we have software programs that we have purchased, that we're utilizing, that can work magic for us, right? And then we realize they can't. And so that has been another issue, because I know, Joe, how many years have I been talking about data? About 14?
Yeah. Thank you. It's just such a huge part of our budget that I think it really deserves a lot of, just conversation. So thank you.
It's the biggest
cost. That only makes sense, right?
And it's really good, Deb, to for us to be, for everybody to hear this, because we have the same questions, right? And we always need to strive to do better. And with our biggest expenditure is rec, that's something we need to do. Keep working on making it better, making it more transparent, collecting more data, looking at worth of programming. Trish and Kelly and I from Creston and Joe, we worked on the leisure access program piece. It was incredibly technical and complicated, but we worked through it, and it really helped us understand. But, two directors have a really good idea of what leisure access program is all about, but how many hours did we spend on that without stipend, by the way?
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll, Michael, if you can put the slides up again and move to the next one, please. Okay, so we'll jump back into the some of the non-recreational services. So one of the ones that's have been receiving a lot of attention lately, and partially driven by provincial legislation, is emergency planning. So service S163. So S163, if you look at it, does not have a lot of detail itself. A101s are overriding emergency management service, and the details are in there. And then those costs are spread out between 6 or 7 different services, depending where the areas are. So Castlegar, the city of Castlegar does its own emergency planning, but our department services I and J. So 6% taxation increase. The largest impact to this service, besides the events we experience, has been the new Emergency and Disaster Management Act. So this is driving changes to emergency planning, risk assessment, business continuity plans, as well as multi-jurisdictional planning, aligning bylaw policies, procedures, templates, and expansion of the Neighborhood Emergency Preparedness Program. So a lot of the work, especially administrative work done by this department lately, has been driven by this act. So also the department's looking at increasing the emergency support services, community emergency preparedness grants. There's a grant for, or a partnership with the CBT, as well as many of you are aware, last summer there was more than two major fire events, one in the central Slocan Valley and one near Argenta and Duncan Lake, that really stretched our emergency response services. So there was a lot of review and assessment after that. That's useful guidance for years coming forward. So we're implementing recommendations from that review, and then as well as various Fire Smart programs. Next slide. So 911 communications,
Before we move on.
oh,
Yeah, I think it's really, really important. When my constituents ask me, and I've been asked many times, they ask me, what is the most important service in Area I? And what is the highest priority? And what I say, it's our fire services, emergency planning, getting ready for catastrophic events. And the other thing that's happened is that the province, I mean, you want to talk about offloading, downloading, and this budget that's coming out here, March 4th, from the province, I wouldn't be at all surprised if there's going to be more downloading on local government. And when that happens, they give us initial money to pay for certain things. But what happens is that you need that sustainable money, the income coming in, where it doesn't become a burden on local government ratepayers. So this is a huge thing, and I'm kind of really worried about what's coming down on March 4th, because we could be looking on something else. What's next? Like, you know, we are involved in so many things that they give us a pot of money to do something, and then after that it becomes our responsibility. But I'll tell you, like, and there was a question asked about fire service. I'll just address it really quickly right now. We're trying to work out, how do we get a wildland vehicle? And we're lucky we got a CBT grant. And then how do we address all these other needs that we have? And Yev and I are going to be doing a whole bunch of work on our fire service budget to see if I can utilize Community Works Funds grants, which we were never allowed to do for our fire halls, or to buy apparatus. So if for every $18,000 that I can figure out how to pay for things through Community Works Funds, that's a 1% reduction in taxation in Area I. So this is my sheet with a whole bunch of things on it about just one of 18 services in Area I. What can we do to find alternative sources to pay for what we need? And I'll tell you this, we're going with SAT services, satellite services for the Pass Creek Fire Hall, because they're blind sometimes. And that's totally wrong. So there's a cost built in for SAT services, and we're actually going with Starlink. That's what we've decided to do, or that's what the recommendation was. So basically, what don't you skimp on? You don't skimp on fire services. You don't skip on emergency planning. I remember, was it 212? With how many? 12 emergencies that we'd had to deal with? Washouts in roads and Upper Pass Creek. The road was completely washed out. We had another event that, thank goodness, that it didn't wash out Highway 3A again, and we've seen this in the past. These are the things we're getting ready for, but the senior order of government money isn't there to support us. And we have more and more responsibilities that we have to look after in local government. Extremely frustrating. So not looking forward to March 4th. Thanks.
yeah, thank you, Director Davidoff. So 911 communications. So the Regional District doesn't actually run a call center, but we contract out 2 different dispatch centers, one in Kelowna for 911 and one in Prince George for fire dispatch. So we're seeing increase in those contracted service costs. Those really aren't a negotiation. This is the cost of doing it. and as well as some increased cost in migrating to next generation 911, which is basically moving from the old analog to a new digital service to give better communications capability, and then replacing some aging radio infrastructure, including repeaters. Next slide, please. So fire protection, which Director David have just talked about. So some region-wide initiatives, so continued multi-year replacement of personal protective and other equipment to meet and maintain regulatory requirements, continuing capital reserve contributions, and utilizing CBT, Small Community Wildfire Readiness Grants. So Terry's Pass Creek, 22% taxation increase. Part of that's driven because last year there was a surplus that helped reduce taxation. That's not there this year, so that's driving some of that increase. And as well, the cost pressures due to regulations for equipment and asset replacement and increased debt servicing costs. Procurement of replacement fire apparatus for Terry's is in progress. We're hoping that at the March board meeting there will be a recommendation and approval for that to go forward. And then the next apparatus for Pass Creek is due in 2032.
Yeah, I just want to comment about fire trucks. Fire Underwriters Survey has some pretty arbitrary rules about the lifespan of a fire truck. Like, it's just ridiculous. I think in one of our fire halls, we had a Mercedes-Benz fire truck with 11,000 kilometers on it that Fire Underwriters Survey would deem obsolete and had to be replaced. So we have lobbied really hard at Union of BC Municipalities and through the Association of Kootenay Boundary Local Government to have these organizations that are so, they influence the insurance industries, and they make recommendations and they analyze equipment. I mean, you could replace a pump on a truck. You could replace certain pieces of equipment on a fire truck that could cost you, still expensive, but not $750,000. I remember when Castlegar bought their ladder truck. There was $1 million. What's a ladder truck now? $4 million? It's horrendous. So what has happened is that, and you know, here we are replacing fire trucks, like tenders and stuff, but fire truck is the word I'll use, or the term I'll use. But the key thing is that it's some of these things are ridiculous because you can keep a piece of equipment and really, especially low kilometers, low use, you can upgrade portions of it without having to replace the whole truck. So these are the kinds of things that we've been fighting for and continue and will continue to fight, and it's really frustrating because it hurts every one of our ratepayers at the end of the day. And that's a piece that I'm sorry I'm sharing it because I think you could feel my frustration because I've worked really hard on this piece, on the arbitrary rules that Fire Underwriters Survey has for all kinds of things. Glade knows all about the loss of fire coverage and being deemed unprotected, and then watching insurance rates go double and then go to quadruple. And we had to fight with the whole insurance industry nationally and provincially for Glade. And the whole province backed us up. So this is the kind of stuff that, there's got to be, we talked about business case analysis and common sense for a lot of things, but there's some really big ticket items that we really are working hard to focus on, and it's like moving an elephant. So I apologize for my frustration, but I just needed to share that.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So fire protection continued, jumping over to Area J a little bit. So 8% taxation increase in Robson. Next apparatus isn't due for about 11 years. Udishenya, 20% taxation increase. So the apparatus bay, the hall addition is completing this year, and about 5 years away from the next fire truck. And then a few of the outlying areas, Hoodoo contract and Fairview contract, are seeing, because they're longer term agreements, seeing some inflationary increases. Okay, next slide. Okay, we're going to jump into the pie charts that sort of give a visual representation where various residents, depending where they live, what their tax bill looks like, what they're funding. So for the city of Castlegar, for the RDCK portion of their tax bill, roughly at least 75% is the rec facility between the arena and the aquatic center. Transit and waste making up gets us to probably over 90%. So next slide. And here's somebody living in Thrums Pass Creek. So fire protection making up probably almost 40%. And with aquatic and arena, you're at over 50, probably 60%. And then the rest of the services probably less than 10% each. Sorry, I should make a note where it says per $250,000 a home value. So yeah, there aren't many homes or any homes available for that price, but that makes the math a little easier. If your house is worth or property is worth $500,000, you multiply by 2, 750 by 3, and so on. Okay, next slide, please. So this is somebody in Brilliant, which we're at right now. Fire protection, again, over a quarter. The arena and aquatic center, probably another 30%. There's a street lighting service here that's a little bigger portion, and then the rest of the services are, again, smaller in component. Next slide, please. Now we move out to to Shore Acres, where portions of Area I do not pay into the pool. So the arena is probably now is about 20%. Fire protection is a large portion, almost 40%, and the rest of the service making up smaller slices. Next slide, please. And Area J, Robson. Fire protection, a very large component, 40%. Aquatic and arena, about another 25%, and the rest of the services, again, being fairly small component. And next slide. Udishenya, again, story is fire and the aquatic and the arena, about 60 or 70% of the tax bill. And next slide.
No, hang on.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if there's anyone here from Udishenya, but the previous slide showed animal control defined J. Robson. It's actually Robson, Raspberry, and then initially, and then in 2017, the bylaw changed to include Udishenya and Fairview. So if anyone's wondering, if anyone's here from Udishenya and you're wondering, or Fairview, and you're wondering why you're getting taxed for animal control, it's because the bylaw changed in 2017. It's a tiny amount, but I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, thank you, Henny. Okay, next slide, Fairview. Next slide. And Deer Park, Renata, so no fire service, but the arena and aquatic center, about 60% of the tax bill. And next slide. And we are at the end of the presentation. So we'll open the floor for questions again, as well as if anybody online has any questions, please go ahead.
I have a question online.
Go ahead, Christine.
Thanks. So just following up on Director David's, and I apologize, I wanted to be there in person, but I felt ill. Just recognizing that we are walking into some tough economic times, and we know that the provincial government has already put on hiring freezes. We know that they're going to be coming down with cuts. We know that there's going to be some some stuff coming down the pipe. And I think that we need to go back as a regional district and go back and look at our budgets in the same aspect. I think we need to look our eyes. We need to look at everything that we're doing. And I know that there's some there that you're speaking to, Yev, I know that we need to have the fire services, and I know that we need to have a lot of stuff there, but that takes me back down to the administration level, where we have to look at what, if you had to cut your budgets because you're not going to get as much money now, where are you going to cut it? And so I think that's what we have to be prepared for, right? Because we just are walking into such uncertain times here. I mean, I would always think that, because I think that we should always be looking at making sure we have tight budgets, and what are our residents, what's their appetite for increases? What can they handle? But recognizing that no one knows what's going to happen over the next period of time, I do think that we need to go back. And then just my last question, was what I started with at the beginning, was I can't find an overall budget anywhere. Everything's broken out by electoral district or jurisdiction. Is there an actual overall budget that shows this is what we pay for salaries and benefits, this is what we pay for this is what we pay? Is there somewhere that I can find that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we don't produce an overall budget, and it's something we have discussed. Where that is brought up is when we do our review of our annual financial statements. A consolidated budget is done then, but then again, we're looking at 2024 budget versus actual. So in April, it'll come out for the previous year, and there has been suggestions that we try to do one ahead of time. The issue with a consolidated budget, though, where it does get a little bit confusing, is the way we do our service budgets and the way we have to do them, they're on a cash basis because the drive requisition does not match what accounting rules dictate a consolidated budget do. But we'll certainly, I think, consider that doing an overall budget. I think myself it's a good idea, and maybe adding a sheet that speaks to that.
Yeah, this is something that we've raised at the board table as well, is that many of us participate in other organizations. Like my full-time job is with School District 20, and the key thing is that the way our budgets work in the school district are different from the way the budgets work in regional district, and or a municipality. And it's like Yev said, we have had this conversation about, can we, and I think we even had somebody come in at one point, we did a workshop, can we have consolidated, financial statements like you see in other organizations? Our RDCK is the most complex local government in BC. With what, almost 200 services now? Because I remember when I first started, it was 180 services. And for rural, for municipalities, they can transfer money from one reserve to another. They don't have the services broken down in the rural areas. With these services, we can have $1 million surplus sitting somewhere. We can not tax anymore for that service, but we can't take that money and use it in another service. The Local Government Act precludes us from doing that. So there's all kinds of changes that we look at and try to lobby for and say, okay, well, if we have the same ratepayers paying into one pot, but yet we have to allocate that money based on the bylaws, the enabling bylaws for every service, and then we are constrained from doing what municipalities can do. That's something that we're kind of looking at, not kind of looking at, but we kept asking, saying, well, can't we change, can't the provincial government change the rules on that to help us out there? So same questions that are being asked here, really good questions. And it's not, it's great that they're being asked here, because I think what we have now, we were lucky if we have 2 people show up to a budget meeting. 2, 3. And now we have people coming who are tracking everything, who are asking questions, who are holding us accountable, who are making suggestions to us about how we can do better. That's awesome. I welcome it. And I know other board members welcome it as well. And all of the questions that, like Deb, I know how hard you and other people work on tracking all the things. That's incredible. Like the effort that you're putting in I really respect you and all the other people who track all this stuff, because I think we can learn from the work that you're doing. And you could see we're sometimes maybe speaking slightly different language, but at the end of the day, the questions you're asking are questions that we have been asking as well. So it's really good to hear that. So thank you, all of the people who are doing this heavy lifting to try help us improve what we do, and at the end of the day, be very fair to our ratepayers. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Director Davidoff.
Maria wanted to say something.
Oh, it's okay. I was just going to put the mic down in front of me, but that's fine. I will answer. Deb, you did ask something earlier, and I didn't know if they'd touch on it, but they didn't. To answer the line items that say transfer to other services is different than what Director Davidoff and what Yev was talking about. So we can't take from a reserve from one service and use it in a different service. But when you see the line item transfer to other services, it means that we're paying another service for something they're providing. So let's say the rec service needs to use technology, like our IT or whatever. We are paying, so that transfer of those services might mean paying IT to give us their service. So they have a service that maybe everyone pays into, and so now our rec is paying for that. So that's what that line item means. So it's not transfer from reserves, what we're saying we can't do, it's just from services that they're, because I know you had asked it before, and I don't think we actually touched on it. Oh, sorry. I knew someone asked, but yeah. Yeah.
Okay, can I jump in there? Yeah, that's been identified as an issue, and we've had discussion.
Yeah, but I'm just going to say for online, no, it's okay, just so they can, because you weren't at the mic. So Deb's comment was that sometimes it doesn't say what service it's going to when it says transfer to other services. It doesn't say what service. Now you can give the answer.
Okay, so thank you for that, Maria. Yeah, we've been discussing that for the last month, and it's something we are going to implement into next year's budget to break that service out. That one line item is probably made up of 12 different items. They're smaller in nature, but what it means is this financial package is going to probably be, 20% bigger or something, but if it's probably worth it from the transparency aspect. Okay. Any other questions online or from the public?
I just got one follow-up, Yev.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Go ahead.
So just back to that overall budget, I appreciate how complicated budgeting is at the RDCK level and all of the transfers and understanding it. I'm an accountant, I get it, but I think without having something like that to look at, I'd have to go through 200 pages to add up what the salaries are at the RDCK. I have no idea. I can't get that anywhere, right? So it's, even though it might be complicated, I just think it'd be good information to know what everything in totality costs rather than split out by electoral districts. So that would be my last comment.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that. I think that that request would be relatively simple to add to our budget package. Other requests may require more work, so we'll certainly certainly consider them and, look at the effort that might be required to add to the budget. We are currently, I would say, literally spending between directors, staff, committees, commissions, thousands of hours on putting this budget together, and that's on top of maintaining and operating operations across all these services. And so we're always looking at making the process more efficient, and we have some ideas for next year as we learn. Maybe AI might help a bit, but we'll certainly take the suggestions here into consideration and see how we might best address some of those concerns.
Okay, I just, not seeing any questions. I just wanted to echo what Andy said. I don't have as much experience as he does with these, but I really appreciate it when you take time out of your lives to come to these meetings. I thank you for that.
I do echo that. I'm always thankful when I see people and their questions because I think it's good. It keeps us accountable, which I think is really important. Hi.
Hi. Just want to make sure there's nobody else online that wanted to.
Doesn't look like, no. Actually, a couple of people have left the meeting. So,
okay. I just want to finish it off by saying that I do understand what you guys have to deal with is not easy. I do get that. I do understand that. But we need you to also understand that there has been a substantial amount of loss of trust from people and the government, regulations, administrations, and industries that are there. And the only way to properly regain that trust is through full, honest, transparent communication. That is the only way to do it. Now, as I mentioned prior, my occupation is numbers, operational efficiencies, deficiencies, expenses. Again, without a full proper picture from your guys' administrative budget, it doesn't paint a very nice picture for you guys. And there is a lot of administrative expenses that you guys could look to be cutting. Again, without the full picture to it, all I can say is based on what I've seen, based on what my occupation is, you guys could cut a lot of non-necessity stuff. With that being said, many of us have had to do more with less over the past 4 years. We've had to put our wants aside and assure our needs and necessities are met. In many cases, this isn't enough, and people are still suffering. During a time of economic uncertainty, combined with the potential of a serious recession, I'm asking this administration to reconsider all proposed tax increases and honestly sit down and determine what is needed in our current budget and remove any extra wants from this plan. People can barely afford to eat right now, and your guys' proposed tax increases might be that last straw that puts somebody out on the street or forces them to sell. That is the sad reality that we're in today. And I would honestly hope that you guys really take this to heart when you sit down at your next budget meeting to see what more you can do. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any more questions? Okay, I'm checking online. Any further questions online? Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, everybody online and in person for coming and attending the meeting, and really appreciate everyone's input, and wishing everyone a good evening and a safe drive home. Thank you. Thank you both for coming. Yeah, all right.
But I'd like to hear, I'm involved in the fault there, and that's